Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all. Season 3, presentation day 5, in which I am going to deal with my presentation topic on power in cultural studies. This is my personal information. Table of contents. What is culture? What is cultural studies? Culture and power. Four types of goals. Historical context of cultural agenda and the cultural power of law. So first, what is culture? According to Oxford Dictionary, the customs and beliefs, art, way of life, and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. Culture is a behavior peculiar to Homo sapiens together with material objects used as an integral part of, of this behavior. So the term cultural is derived from cultura and colir, meaning to cultivate. It also meant to honor and project. By the 19th century in Europe, it taste of the upper class. The classic the classic definition of culture was provided by the 19th century English anthropologist Edward Burnett Tylor in his Primitive Culture. Culture is that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So, culture is the mode of producing meaning and ideas. This mode is a negotiation over which meanings are valid. Allied culture controls meanings because it controls the term of the debate. So, what is cultural studies? According to Oxford Dictionary, cultural studies are the critical analysis of the text and practices of everyday life in contemporary society, an interdisciplinary enter- enterprise involving both the humanities and social sciences. Cultural studies are interdisciplinary field concerned with the role of social institutions in the shaping of culture. Cultural study is the science of understanding modern society with an emphasis on politics and power. Power cultural studies is an umbrella term used to look at a number of different subjects. Originally identified with the Center for Contemporary Cultural Studies at the University of Birmingham, with such as scholars as Richard Hogarth, Stuart Hall, and Raymond Williams. Cultural studies later became a well-established field in many academic institutions, and it has since has broad influence in sociology, anthropology, historiography, literary criticism, philosophy, and art criticism. Among its central concerns are the place of race or ethnicity, class, and gender in the productions of cultural knowledge. So, including cultural studies, it includes media cultures, film and journalism, sociology and industrial culture, or globalization and social theory. So cultural studies is not a tightly coherent unified movement with a fixed agenda, but a loosely coherent group of tendencies, issues, and questions. Culture and power. the, cert- the, cert- the centrality and instrumentality of power for achieving culturally nurtured goals. Cultures foster normative standards for the legitimate use of power. The specific definition of power complicates the study of culturally nurtured standards regarding power. This makes it difficult to recognize that some cultures may promote the use of power for the benefit of others rather than achieving status and prestige. If power is defined solely in personalized terms, then cultural differences in power concepts can't be observed. Cultural frameworks have had little to say about how culture nurtures views about the meaning and purpose of power. Its emphasis has been on cultural patterns of inequality in the distribution of power. Cultural study as an interdisciplinary field explores how culture is created, shared, and experienced within society. It understands that the way of power operates within cultural context and culture culture can both reflect and challenge power dynamics. Cultural studies often draws on Antonio Gramsci's concept of cultural hegemony, which refers to the dominance of a particular group's cultural beliefs, values, and the practices over others. Cultural studies scholars analyzes how different social groups are represented in media, literature, and other cultural studies. In a narrowly defined version of cultural studies, the typical questions have been about the production or organization or of meaning as a site of power. A typical way of posing power questions has been in terms of identity, especially where identity is seen as a problematic issue and where individual and collective identities are understood as being always created under social pressures. Four goals of cultural study. Uh, there are four main goals in cultural study: political engaged, interdisciplinary, contextual, and focuses on articulations. So, first, political engaged. So, political is not an afterthought for cultural studies. It is a primary central characteristics of project. Cultural studies is not concerned with problems that are purely disciplinary in nature. Second one, interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary is a study. Interdisciplinary is that the study of branch. Contextual cultural studies, such questions are never quite so simple as the relevant context for any given cultural studies project is never out there in some obvious and objective fashion. Context is simultaneously something that the cultural studies practitioner selects from a range of real world possibilities and something that he or she actively constructs. Uh, uh, in interdisciplinary cultural study relationship to the traditional disciplines has always been complicated. Cultural study scholars can be found in a broad range of disciplines across the humanities and social sciences, including the American studies, communication, education, English, gender, sexuality studies, history, sociology, and theater. So denies separation of uh, fourth articulations, and other one is denies separation of high and low or elite or popular culture. So in cultural critics today work to transfer the term culture to include mass culture, popular culture, uh, folk culture, and urban culture. So the articulation is a cultural studies way out of the trap of essentialism. Essentialism assumes that the major relationship between different cultural phenomena, for example, a text and its meaning, a demographic and a specific political viewpoint, are stable, it's fixed and inevitable. Historical context of cultural agenda. So, the rise of the cultural agenda seems to be related to five processes, each of which fits cultural questioning in different ways. So, uh, for cultural agenda is in five processes. We in which the first one is the development of capitalist modernity. Second one, the construction of nations and national popular movements, the cross cultural encounters, the growth of specialized form of cultural production, and the fifth one is the contemporary elaboration of this media on a global scale. So these are the five processes of historical context of cultural agenda, and six sources of power. So first one is physical power, wealth, state action, social norms, ideas, and numbers. So these six are the six sources of power. The cultural power of law. So this book, colonizing Hawaii, is the cultural power of law. It's written by Sally Angley Mary. She was an American anthropologist Siv wrote in his book The Power of Law in that about how does law in uh, how does law in that about how does law transfer family, sexuality, and community in the fractured social world, uh, characteristic of the colonizing process. She reveals that how in Hawaii's indigenous Hawaiian law was displaced by a transplanted Anglo-American law as global movement of capitalism, Christianity, and imperialism swept across the islands. So, according to Mary indicates in his book that emerge from the conjunction linking these two terms, a conjunction that points toward a certain theoretical exhaustion in the domains of inquiry that take culture and law as their objects. Uh, she wrote in his book that provides ample illustration of each of Komarov's suggestions for what more there is to say about law, culture, and colonialism. She outlines the discursive references of law and legality in Hawaiian context, both in the period preceding the importation by the early of legal forms uh, from New England. And in the aftermath of that appropriation, she demonstrates the constitutive power of law to create a new colonial society in the islands to court. Conclusion. To sum up, cultural studies is a selective tradition which is interested in cultural as a source of power, difference, and emancipation, closely connected with social movements and with cultural critique. A cultural study is a way of being in the academy, of being academic or not quite academic. In the current situation, when most or all humanities and social science disciplines have something to say about the cultural, this includes being especially attentive to the work of colleagues and students in or around other disciplines. So these are the references. Now, if you have any questions, then ask me.
Anjali, in what ways does language reflect and reproduce power dynamics?
Language is a powerful tool that reflect and shape our uh, power of law in cultural studies. So, cultural studies encounters the uh, cultural studies scholars. Cultural studies scholars encounter the power of law in the relations between the broad range in humanities and in different cultural phenomena.
Anjali, my question is how do digital technologies and social media platforms redefine power relations in contemporary society?
The digital technologies and social media platforms define power relations in contemporary society in context of uh, text and the study of power and in contemporary society. Digital technology has a global global concern with the study of power in contemporary time of digital technologies in cultural study. Thank you.